Hello, I'm Jan Szrewiński. Welcome on board the Eastern Express. And as always, I hope you enjoy the journey. And today the journey leads to the Middle East. First, a quick recap. The US led an international coalition back in April that helped Israel defend itself against a salvo of several hundred rockets and drones fired by Iran and its allies in retaliation for the killing of several senior Revolutionary Guard officers in an Israeli raid on Damascus. With the help of the US, Britain, France and Sunni Arab states, and a few others, most of the missiles were shot down at the time. The situation, however, only got worse after that. Since then, a Hamas leader was killed in Tehran, presumably by Israel. Iran then vowed revenge, but it's yet to happen. In Friday's attack on Beirut, alongside Hezbollah leader Nasrallah and other senior Hezbollah commanders, Iranian Revolutionary Guard General Abbas Nilfaroshan was killed. Iran will not leave any of Israel's crimes unanswered. We are determined and will respond, announced Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani. So is Iran afraid of a clash with Israel, or is it in fact preparing for a fight?
These images released by the Israeli army allegedly show soldiers preparing to conduct limited, localized, targeted operations against the Iran-backed group Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. The ground operation is a follow-up to Israel's killing of Chairman Hassan Nasrallah and Commander Ali Karaki on Friday, a powerful blow that decapitated Hezbollah's leadership.
And we'll continue degrading Hezbollah until all our objectives are met.
In Tehran, an air of dogged determination was palpable as Iranians mourned the death of the Hezbollah chief on Monday.
We shouldn't put down the weapons. The time of negotiations has passed.
The organizational and human strength of Hezbollah is much more than these martyrdoms. The final victory in this battle will belong to the resistance front and Hezbollah.
But despite the fervent words from Iran's streets and its leader, Tehran has been sending mixed signals regarding its next steps.
Iran will not remain indifferent in case of a full-scale war in Lebanon. We stand with the people of Lebanon with all means.
The governments of Lebanon and Palestine have the capability and strength to defend themselves. There is no need to send extra volunteer forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
According to an analysis by the AFP's John Gambrell, Iran's future retaliatory strategy could include targeting Jewish tourists, synagogues, or Israeli diplomatic missions. Tehran could also weaponize its nuclear program, given its already near weapons-grade levels of enriched uranium. And now that Iranian hackers have managed to disrupt the ongoing presidential campaign of Donald Trump, Tehran could take a shot at Israel's administration and its cybersecurity.
And now, as always, it's time to take a look at the issue in greater detail. Iran has always been playing the long game in its conflict with Israel. Despite the recent humiliation of an Israeli strike on a building in Tehran that killed Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in late July, Iran has kept a cool head. While they promised retaliation, it hasn't come, at least not yet. Perhaps Tehran is biding its time, calculating that it is not yet militarily ready for a full-scale revenge. Instead, it relies on proxies, like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Yemeni Houthis, who disrupt shipping in the Red Sea and occasionally launch rockets towards Israel. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei vowed that the death of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah would not go unpunished. He called for a unified Muslim response against what he labeled the vile regime of Israel. The stakes were raised even higher with the recent attack on Beirut on Friday. Now, that particular strike killed not only Nasrallah and other top Hezbollah commanders, but also General Abbas Nilfaroshan, a senior officer in Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Now, this suggests that Iran may be planning something significant. They have a history of responding when the time is right, often through indirect means. The question, therefore, is this: will their retaliation come sooner through their proxies, or will they wait to strike in a way that truly shifts the balance? And then there is the question of what Israel wants to achieve. Prime Minister Netanyahu actually made a very unusual address in which he said, and I quote, "When Iran is finally free, and that moment will come sooner than anyone thinks, things will be different. Our two ancient peoples, Jews and Persians, will live in peace. So the question is whether Israel is simply planning to undermine Iran's influence by striking at Hezbollah and other proxies, or does it seek a long-term goal of reshaping the situation in the Middle East in general? And here to shed more light on this story is our guest today, Marcin Styszyński, Institute of Oriental Studies at the Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań. Hello and welcome to Eastern Express.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
So let us begin with what Israel really wants to achieve here. Do you think that Prime Minister Netanyahu's ambitions reach beyond merely winning this war against Hezbollah and perhaps all the way towards reshaping the equilibrium in the Middle East as we know it?
That's an important question you've just mentioned, and very important topic, especially in the frame of the ongoing crisis in the Middle East. I think that we are facing the new objectives or all the new objectives of Israel, especially after the 7th of October last year when Hamas attacked Israel and Israel responded to this attack. But now we forget about the Gaza Strip because it's completely destroyed. We have more than 40,000 people dead. We have 80% of the infrastructure destroyed and devastated. So now the main objective is to respond to the proxy war in the Middle East. We should remember that so far this proxy war has reflected the hostile or the hostility between the Gulf state especially and Iran. Since 2022, actually 2023 formally, the proxy war between the Gulf state, especially Saudi Arabia, but also United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and etc., including Egypt as well, or other states, has finished, and some normalization of contacts and foreign relations have been established.
There's no restitution of diplomatic relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia, courtesy of China, of all countries. But let us go back to the term proxy war, yes, because you're not, of course, suggesting that Israel is actually an actor in this particular proxy war who does not have his own agenda. What you're suggesting is that there is this broader context, right? That Iran on the one hand, the Gulf states on the other hand. Where does Israel stand in this? Because Israel has been a country that has been surrounded by adversaries for a very long time. Now it seems to be striking back, and successfully at that. So of course the big question is, how far will Israel go?
Yes, this is. Let me just finish my idea about the proxy war, because when the proxy war between the Gulf state or Sunni state and Shia state Iran has finished, so the only one hostile side in the region is now Israel for many states, as you mentioned, neighboring states as well. So now we have this proxy war between Israel and Iran and its allies or axis, like we have in Lebanon, it's Hezbollah, we have in Yemen Houthi, we have in Syria some military groups, we have in Iraq as well some military groups, and etc. So the main objective is to face or to respond to this allies or this pro-Iranian proxies. But we should remember that it's a disastrous step, because because the final step, it will be the conflict between straight or direct conflict between Tehran and Tel Aviv. Because if Israel destroyed some proxies now in Lebanon, then Syria and Iraq, so on the table we will have only Tehran. And just to note that Iran is still an important ally of Russia, besides Western countries support Israel. So for the future we have very pessimistic scenarios, although this proxy war, as I mentioned, between the Gulf state, I mean Saudi Arabia, and Iran has finished. So some diplomatic steps are possible, still possible. We can mention that under auspices of China, we have this peace normalization between Saudi Arabia and Iran in 2023. So,
do you think it's an inevitable scenario that we have a direct confrontation? Some suggest that Israel may want to weaken the Iranian regime by depriving it of its influence, by weakening and ultimately perhaps eliminating its proxies. This will undermine the credibility of the regime in Tehran. And also there was this very unusual step by Prime Minister Netanyahu, a direct address to the people of Iran as opposed to the authorities, suggesting that perhaps Israel may be a fundamental ally in the future liberation from that regime. That at some point, sooner than you may expect, said Mr. Netanyahu, this regime may actually begin to collapse. So would that necessarily mean that we'll be facing an all-out military conflict? Or perhaps one of the sides to this potential conflict is not quite as strong as it seems and might begin to buckle under the weight of mere pressure exerted by Israel. This was a theory that was advanced by some commentators. What would you say about this particular option?
That's an interesting point you've mentioned, an interesting topic, because we also may refer to President Netanyahu's speech, Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech in the UN just last week, and he mentioned some topics regarding cooperation between the Gulf state especially, or Sunni state, and Israel. But we should remember that we are talking about the past. It was the idea, especially during President Trump's idea. Just remember, he visited Saudi Arabia in 2017, and he focused on this topic to an alliance between Gulf state, Sunni state, and Israel against Iran. It was the main idea. So Iran was the main hostile side, but it's finished.
Do you think it's no longer possible now? And if so, why is that the case?
We can see that some missiles from Houthi Yemen, missiles which targeted, I just remember because I worked in Saudi Arabia at that time, just targeted Saudi Arabia. Now they are flying above or on Saudi Arabian airspace, and they are targeting Israeli infrastructure in Eilat, for instance. So it means that the neighboring states, maybe they won't be involved directly, but for Israel, it's also a problem and a challenge that this lack of cooperation and hostile or enemy against Iran is now complicated.
Do you think that the fact about these missiles, because that's an interesting point, you said that these missiles are flying above the territories of these Gulf states towards Israel, but would you say that they would be expected to intercept them? I mean, just how difficult it is to agree upon the interception of missiles is shown clearly by the debate concerning Russian missiles flying towards Ukraine close to NATO borders. And so far, there have been calls for their interception. NATO countries say, well, we do not really want to do that. And of course, going beyond the question of whether they should or not, it shows that perhaps a country that's not involved directly might not really be willing to expend its own air defense assets to protect another country with whom they are not formally allied. So would you say that this is the sole indication that there is an acquiescence in the Houthis attacking Israel, or perhaps there are some other factors at play here?
Sorry. Yes, in fact, when Iran responded in April as a response for killing of some commanders in Syria, so for instance, Jordanian air defense intercepted some missiles from Iran. So it means that some neighboring countries react, of course, but it doesn't mean that they will react and they will cooperate like they cooperated in the past. However, we have this now we have this important pro-Iranian or proxies groups in Syria, in Iraq, and we have also in Yemen. So that's a challenge for Israel and a challenge for the whole region. I'm not quite sure about this scenarios regarding cooperation between Iran and Israel, but some diplomatic measures could be implemented. But so far, it's hard to say because still the ongoing system in Iran. I mean, this concept of the supreme leader of the country and this hierarchy of Ayatollahs is still a main player in this country, so it's hard to predict if we can talk about any changes or political changes in this country.
And where does the U.S. administration stand in all this? We have actually heard certain comments suggesting that this is a bit of an embarrassment because the Biden administration was trying to persuade Prime Minister Netanyahu not to go ahead with the attack, especially the ground attack later on. There are Israeli forces conducting limited ground operations in southern Lebanon. The U.S. on the one hand would like to see peace in the Middle East, which of course has been an elusive objective for decades now. But also they said, well, we understand Israel has a right to defend itself, and also we support its attempts to dismantle the infrastructure used to attack Israel in southern Lebanon. So do you think the U.S. administration is still in control there, or is Prime Minister Netanyahu essentially taking advantage of the fact that we have upcoming elections, the Biden administration is nearing the end of its existence, about to be replaced either by Kamala Harris's, which would be a continuation, or by Donald Trump, which would obviously change things up a bit. And so that he is emboldened by this and not really willing to listen to the U.S. anymore, which is a bit of a problem for the U.S., right?
That's also a very important topic you've mentioned, because of course, as you said, we're expecting next month we are expecting elections in the U.S. But I think that the U.S. administration is focused on Israel, and just after the death of killing of Hezbollah's leader Nasrallah, the U.S. administration has said that it's the justice has been done. So on the one hand, they are trying to decrease tragic casualties of the conflict, because that's also an important factor. We forget that every day we have more and more casualties in the neighboring states. Now we have Lebanon.
Marcin Staszyński was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your expertise.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
And now we're moving on to Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you really don't want to miss. And we begin with the tensions between global superpowers, which for the time being show no signs of abating. The US Helsinki Commission has said the United States must buckle up for a long-term confrontation with Russia.
Chaired by Republican Joe Wilson, the Commission warned that the US faced a prolonged confrontation with Russia that will endure beyond Putin's tenure. In its report, the US Helsinki Commission emphasized Ukraine's battle against Russian forces as pivotal not only for Ukraine's stability, but also to challenge Russian aggression and influence more broadly. The report arrives amid uncertainty over US military support for Ukraine, with Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump and some other factions questioning the financial commitment. Since Russia's invasion in 2022, Congress has allocated substantial aid, primarily for domestic production and support services.
An investigation into potential crimes against humanity committed by the Alexander Lukashenko regime has become much more of a realistic prospect following Lithuania's decision to raise the issue of the International Criminal Court. Let's take a closer look at this story.
Belarus's opposition in exile has ardently seconded a decision by Lithuania's Justice Ministry to ask the International Criminal Court to investigate alleged crimes against humanity committed by the regime of Alexander Lukashenko. In its referral of the situation in Belarus, Lithuania cited numerous crimes by the regime, including persecution, deportations, torture and other inhumane actions. Lukashenko's regime has imprisoned and intimidated opposition figures and supporters, with thousands of Belarusians reportedly jailed as part of an ongoing crackdown on dissent. The United Transitional Cabinet, an opposition group formed in exile in 2022 and led by former presidential candidate Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, said an investigation into the crimes could lead to international accountability and provide hope for Lukashenko's victims.
A while ago, the death of the Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has sent ripples across the global community. And now there is a new report which questions the stated cause of death of Navalny, who died at a remote Russian penal colony following his imprisonment.
Russian opposition leader and vocal Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, who died in the Polar Wolf colony in northern Russia, may have been poisoned. The insider investigation has revealed two official documents that appear to have been altered to align with the state's claim that Navalny's death resulted from cardiac issues. Both documents were issued on July 26, 2024, but one version appears to have been edited. His widow, Yulia Navalnaya, stated that in his final moments he complained of intense stomach pain. This claim is mirrored by one of the documents obtained by the insider. Resuscitation specialist Alexander Polupan, who treated Navalny after he survived the poisoning with a Novichok-style nerve agent in 2020, argued that the symptoms described were more consistent with poisoning. Navalny's allies believe he was killed in prison, likely on orders from the Kremlin, a claim Moscow has strongly denied.
And for this episode of Eastern Express, it's the end of the line. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates. I'm Jonasz Rewiński. Bye for now.